Hello, folks. This is going to be a special broadcast of the fake news, and I want you to really listen to what they say, how they say it, the words that are used, because they don't stand with America. There's no way, with the vocabulary that they're using in this special report, they're biased. Incredibly so. And as a conservative, and as an American, listening to this language and how they're talking, well, doesn't seem all very correct, right? So let's listen and analyze together and watch and listen to the words that are being chosen, the specific words that are being chosen. All right? Stand by. Here we go.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Margaret Brennan in Washington. We have breaking news out of the Middle East. President Trump is about to address the nation. Roughly 2 hours ago, he announced via social media that the United States has bombed 3 nuclear sites in Iran. CBS is reporting 6 B-2 stealth fighters dropped 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs on at least one of those sites.
Try 3. Okay. It was actually 3 B-2 bombers. Let's continue.
Very first time that weapon has been used in combat. Today, it was to destroy an underground nuclear facility about 60 miles southeast of Tehran. The president said that all American planes are safely now out of Iranian airspace. These American strikes are in support of a war that Israel launched on Iran 9 days ago. We know.
Yes, Israel started this. Do you hear what she's saying? Maybe what they're not telling you is the reason why Israel did this and did that is because the Iranians are hell-bent on evil and destruction and hate. But they won't tell you this. Let's continue, and I'll stay in the picture.
Tonight, that the Israeli prime minister has spoken to the president, thanked him, and congratulated him on the strikes. We are awaiting word now from the president of the United States himself, who is expected to address the nation from the White House. As we await him taking the podium, I want to go to our White House correspondent, Weijia Jiang. Weijia, we know that the president returned to the White House in the 5 o'clock hour, around 6 p.m. He had a national security briefing. What do we know about what was going on at that period of time?
Margaret, that's right. He was in his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, but came back this evening, which was actually always the plan, even when he took off for that trip. And right beforehand, he said that Iran had at maximum 2 weeks to try to reach a diplomatic deal. There was no indication at that time that he was going to follow through with the strikes. But of course, that quickly changed.
We see the president now.
The U.S. military carried out massive precision.
You might have stopped this other hack from talking when he was walking out the door, approaching the podium. There's just no respect. You see what I mean? Don't wait for the guy to get up there on the mic and say the first 2 or 3 words before you interrupt this nobody.
Strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin-Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel. And God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's so. I also want to...
President of the United States walking away from the podium there where he had been flanked by the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, along with Secretary of Defense and his Vice President, announcing and congratulating the military.
Oh, I know this woman can't stand the words that she's reading. And of course, the president walked away from the podium because he was done talking. He walked away and, he was this one and that one. And you know what? This woman is just, she can't stand the words that she's reading. She can't celebrate like we are celebrating that they were stopped cold.
On what he called spectacular military success.
Yes, he did call it that. And that's what it is. That's how it's defined. All right? Bunker busters going through the mountain, through the concrete, into these facilities that shouldn't even exist. Yeah, that's what he calls it, because that's what it is.
In these strikes that were carried out inside Iran earlier today, he said the sites were, quote, completely obliterated. Now, he did seem in those remarks not to completely close the door on further military action. He thanked the U.S. military and said that he hopes that their services won't be needed again. And he said all of this was meant to erase the nuclear threat posed by Iran. To be clear, U.S. intelligence assessment has been that Iran was not yet building a nuclear weapon, but that they had been enriching nuclear fuel at worrisome levels. The international community had high degree of outcry on that point. Just a few weeks ago in Vienna, you had the Israeli strikes come.
No. Tulsi Gabbard's language was taken out of context, and they're trying to twist it. All right? And look, this had to happen. We're not going to wait around to get nuked. We're not going to wait around for Israel to get nuked. These people, you know what? The entire international community, all right? Not just UK, not just USA, not just France, but the entire global community, all right? Including Russia, all right? They don't want Iran to have a nuclear power, all right? To have the ability to create a mushroom cloud with anybody who they're aggressing with, all right? So let's continue.
Following day after that, in the midst of what had been a diplomatic effort by President Trump and his envoy, Steve Witkoff, to negotiate with Iran to get them to limit their nuclear program. Those did not result in an agreement, though up until today, I am told, the U.S. was trying to reach out. Yet, just a few hours ago, we saw these strikes carried out. I want to go over.
We reached out previously, and there was no appropriate response. We reached out. We've been reaching out for years, all right? And with President Trump becoming the president again, number 47, he has tried and tried and tried. Well, what happens when, you know what, you're ignored, all right? And when you are, you know, you do get a response, or you do get an answer from, you know, Iran. It's, you know, basically screw you, and we're going to do what we want. So, you know what? This is what happens. All right? You don't understand the resolve of the president. When the president tells you to do something, you just can't ignore him and do it the hell you want and be arrogant and facetious and, you know. I mean, these people are responsible for so much death around the world. They had to be crushed like this with their nuclear facilities. We didn't go after the Iranian people. All right? It's not the Iranian people that chant death to America. All right? Death to Israel. All right? The Iranian people are more than likely probably like the American people, like the Russian people, like the German people, like the British people, all right? The Japanese people, all right? They're innocent, all right? We didn't go after innocent civilians here, and I don't think we're going to either.
To the Pentagon now, where our Charlie D'Agata is, and apparently,
Where do
Charlie,
these
you'll be
find
there
these
early
people?
tomorrow, since the president
These
just
names?
said there'll be an 8 a.m. Pentagon press conference where he will detail these strikes. The Secretary of Defense will. What do we know at this hour? I know Iran is acknowledging and saying that these strikes happened, but that it will not end their nuclear program.
Yeah, well, Margaret, we await that briefing tomorrow. We have had very few briefings here at the Pentagon, so it'll be interesting to see how much detail is shared.
And it will end their nuclear program, because that's what President Trump wants. All right, look, we're not after Iran to stop, you know, producing nuclear energy, you know, to power their homes. This is not what this is about, but CBS News won't tell you that, all right? They want this ability for nuclear energy to enrich centrifuges and all of this for nuclear weapons, all right? The atomic bomb, the nuclear weapon, all right? To devastate and destroy, and to wipe Israel off the map. So that's what their motivation is. So you better believe what I'm telling you. And never mind what CBS News is, you know, trying to, you know, fluff up a soft pillow here. I mean, their ability to make nuclear will continue, and they're going to be defined. You know what? When you say something like that, you're not with America. You're definitely not with the Trump administration. You're not on the same page with all the people across the United States that turned that election map red. You're in total defiance of that victory. All right. Like I said, the reason why I wanted to show you this video is just to hear the language. All right. And it's all very liberal and democratic and crocodile tears. And let's continue.
There. But as it was already shared, 6 bunker busters on Fordow, that would have meant at least 3 of the B-2 bombers that we've already discussed, where they came from,
3.
when they were deployed.
Not
we were
6.
talking earlier today about whether they went from Whiteman, whether they were going to Guam. Maybe it was a head pump, maybe it was a head shake of where this was going to go and when it was going to happen. Something like 30 Tomahawk missiles at 2 other sites there. They've been called massive precision strikes. I think what we need to know, and I'm not sure whether that is knowable at this point, is how damaging that was. If the White House is to be believed, whether it crippled and entirely took out Iran's nuclear capabilities at Fordow, Natanz, and Safran. He's calling it a spectacular success. But the other thing we need to be concerned about now is he mentioned when he took out Qassam, or the assassination of Qassam Soleimani when he was president. And we saw the retaliation then across multiple American targets. There are 40,000 U.S. service members spread throughout the Middle East, and they have come under attack before. And we've already known, even leading up to this, because it was always a what if, but leading up to where we are now, we've been speaking to people here at the Pentagon, DOD, saying if there is an Iranian retaliation, how are we postured? How is the United States postured to defend against that? There are multiple. In fact, I can't remember how many times or how the last time we've seen this many military assets flooded into that area in order to defend against a possible Iranian retaliation.
She's not interested in how many assets are in the region. She doesn't agree with the idea in the first place.
To protect U.S. forces there.
No doubt that force posture has been really built up in these past few days. At the same time, it was just this morning that we heard the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, announce with detail for the very first time how Americans in Israel could actually safely get out. The U.S. government brought about 70 of them by plane to Greece, evacuating them from the area. The airspace over Israel has been closed for days, so it has made it hard for people to leave if they wanted to, because there has been this back and forth with Iran's retaliation.
Yeah, you know what? You don't need to worry about, retaliation and the airstrikes, but she makes it sound like Iranian ability is having an impact. All right. Israel has the Iron Dome. They did have a hospital that was hit. They had a few other places that was hit. But by and large, they had people at the beach the other day. They had people going to work. And then the situation did change where it was like, okay, let's only go out if you have to. But this business about, we're going to get rid of Americans, send them to Greece because, oh my God, the Iranians are really having an effect over here and they're really creating all kinds of damage and havoc. Stop. All right. We took care of them. Israel did more than enough to eliminate pretty much the ability for any more, there might be a few. All right, coming over, but it's nowhere near it was, and certainly not the ability to go on and on and on. Well, we have to get rid of Americans in here. It's not safe because the Iranians, oh boy, they're really kicking our ass. Stop.
Against Israel, some of those missiles piercing their defenses, those U.S.-provided defenses in many ways. And I know it has been remarkable, Charlie, that whether we're talking to current or former officials, they all seem to say it's amazing we haven't yet seen retaliation. We haven't yet seen a strike against a U.S. base or U.S. assets. Now that the United States has entered this conflict, in this way, that may change. And I've no doubt that there is a bracing for what could be coming next. I spoke to some diplomats in the region just within the past hour.
Yeah, it didn't need to be a conflict if they did what we told them to do. All right? The whole reason why it's a conflict to begin with is because you don't have the ability to listen. All right? All right? So that's why it's a conflict.
And I was told there wasn't much of a heads up given to some of our allies there. Just to remind people, Charlie spoke about 40,000 U.S. military personnel in that region of the world. The fourth largest military installation America has in the world is in Kuwait, very close there to Iran. Very significant naval assets in Bahrain. A lot of American families stationed there. So it's not just Israel, it is the surrounding Arab countries that the U.S. is allied with who are holding their breath tonight, wondering if hosting those American forces also makes them a target. So
these people, they're not, they're holding their breath because they're shallow and they're weak and stop with the negativity. These are servicemen and women and their families. All right? They do this because they can do this, they want to do this, and they're supported by their families. They're not hunkered down, nor are they afraid, nor are they terrified. They're part of the most elite fighting force on the entire planet. So why the hell would they be hunkered down and fearful and, oh my God, let's wait for the attack to happen. I don't know if we're going to be hit or not. I mean, stop with the negativity and stop with the language.
We are going to be watching all those bases that you see there on the screen, as well as some of the other American assets in the region. I also just want to acknowledge here that while the president has been saying this was a successful strike, we don't yet know what the end game is here. We don't know that from the United States, and we don't know that from the nation of Israel either. The goal was stated to be destruction of Iran's nuclear program. Tonight, you have out of Iran statements from their atomic agency saying that this national industry, as they refer to it, will not be stopped. That you can't kill knowledge. There have been, of course, assassinations of nuclear scientists, as we know. We want to go now on the phone.
Well,
we are
that's
joined by
killing knowledge,
General
isn't it?
Frank McKenzie, who was the combatant commander there in the Middle East for so many years.
I hope they took a whole lot of notes, all right? Because those notes are going to be needed, written by a dead man, all right? So, hope you have, a 5-subject notebook to, write down all those notes and how to do things, because the person who wrote it is dust.
Here's General McKenzie. I hope you can hear me now. I know you have literally gamed out this scenario for years when you were in the job. What are those U.S. military families? What are those soldiers and naval men? What are they bracing for tonight? What should we expect with the light of day?
Bracing.
Good to be with you tonight. I've worked on this plan for 15 years. It looks like a successful strike. As you noted, we'll know more in the hours and days ahead how successful it actually was. But what the Central Command commander right now is most concerned about is the possible Iranian response. What's it going to be? What are they going to do? And a lot of the thinking over the last few days, I'm sure, in the Department of Defense has been how to prepare for that inevitable Iranian response. And so we flowed forces in. We'll be ready for it. What we want to do is avoid a significant loss of American life that would then push us up the escalatory ladder. So we want to save the Iranians from themselves. We want to maintain balance in the region if we can. And that's what the CENTCOM commander is going to be working on right now. I would also note that Iran is gravely weakened as a result of their exchanges with Israel over the past few weeks, and in fact over the last year or so. So this is a very significant thing to bear in mind as we look at what the Iranians might do in response. The final thing I will say is this. The Iranians have held all the lower cards on the escalation ladder. But the simple fact is this. We hold all the higher cards on the escalation ladder as does Israel, and the Iranians know that.
Well, General, to that point, I was speaking to an Iran analyst just a day ago who described this regime as homicidal but not suicidal, meaning they would restrain themselves from a head-to-head conflict with the United States. As you just pointed out, they are in such a weakened position because of the conflict over the past year or more.
Because they don't listen. That's why they're in a weakened condition. Okay? So let's not make that mistake.
Does that had to have factored in to the calculation tonight? Do you think President Trump is being overconfident if he thinks this is one and done?
The president didn't say that. All right? He said there were other military targets that were much easier. And what is to be occurring is basically upon Iran. If they make peace, then great. But if they continue their hostilities or their aggression, as he said, well, then time will tell. And you see what I'm saying here? The language used is very wrong.
I think President Trump actually has unique and powerful credibility on this issue. He noted the strike on Qasem Soleimani, which I really believe was the correct action at the time. I was responsible for carrying out his orders on that strike and really began the arc of the trajectory that has taken us to this point where Iran is on their back foot and in very grave danger of even surviving as a state. So I think that's something to understand as we take a look at it. I think we should remember that the primary goal of Iranian statecraft is preservation of the regime. At different times before, this regime has chosen to step back when faced with the possibility of regime destruction. I think they're rapidly approaching that point right now, and I think this measurably moves us forward to that end.
We have learned here at CBS that there was some advance notice that was on passed to Iran about these strikes. But as I said, there wasn't full diplomatic notice being given to all of the allies in the region.
Nor should there be. All right? You're not going to telegraph, hey, this is what we're going to do. All right? You know what? Allies or not. That's the reason why there's a little bit of diversion with the media. All right? With planes going one way in both directions, as a matter of fact, because people get on social media and then it gets over to them and then they're prepared. No. You know what? When we go after you, we want to sucker punch you. We want to throat punch you. All right? We're not listening to us. It's called dominance in military. All right? So.
You ran that operation in 2020 when, as you mentioned, Qasem Soleimani was taken off the battlefield. How much visibility does the United States have for what comes next? How good is our intelligence in terms of the threat picture?
How good is our intelligence? You know what? Don't insult my intelligence by stating something like that.
Margaret, our intelligence is very good. Penetration of Iran by human sources and other sources is very good. We're going to have a good feel for what the Iranians are thinking. The other factor that's out there is much Iranian leadership is dead now. And the Iranians have, because of their corrupt system of promoting officers and keeping them in place, they don't have a good succession plan inside their military. So people go into a job and they stay 10, 12, 15 years while they're growing rich from that job. So those people are now dead, but they haven't groomed a successor. So that makes it very hard for the supreme leader to formulate decisions and to transmit those decisions to the Iranian military. And that will further complicate Iranian responses, I believe, in the days and weeks ahead.
Thank you, General. And just to clarify for our audience, as we were talking about the killings of top Iranian officials, many of them have been military leaders. We were showing you a picture there of the supreme leader, we were talking about Qasem Soleimani.
All of them were military. No innocent civilians making the accusation, oh, well, there was collateral damage. And, you don't have to say it. That's what she means when she says something like this. They were all military or in the regime of Iran. All right?
Talking about the Supreme Leader just now, showing you a picture of him. We do not know his whereabouts at this hour. He has actually not been seen in public for a few days now. He had this video address that we are showing you, but he is at 86 years old, dealing with cancer, and all of our reporting is that he has been very hard to contact. In other words, the top levels of Iranian government aren't sure where their boss is. At this hour, we do not know his whereabouts. When we're talking about succession planning, that is the man, that is the main decision maker from which all things flow. And so this question of what comes next is going to be really important to think about as we look at who else may be able to give orders or not give orders. We want to speak to Samantha Vinograd, who I'm told is joining us as well right now, a national security contributor to CBS. She also joins us on the phone. She was a former assistant secretary for counterterrorism at Homeland Security. And Sam, I know you served before that on the National Security Council as well. There has been so much reporting around the threat in the United States over the past few years, the risk to officials involved with actions against Iran, the risk of sleeper cells here in the United States. When we talk about retaliation, should we be thinking about the homeland?
Margaret, I am deeply concerned about the potential for retaliatory attacks here in the homeland by Iran. Iran's nuclear program has certainly taken a hit. We will await the battleground assessment to understand how deep that hit was. But we do know that Iran is likely going to rely on its asymmetric advantage in this conflict with the United States and Israel, which is its proxies all around the world. Iran has for decades had the both intent and the ability to direct and inspire individuals to attack American, Israeli, and Jewish interests and assets all around the world. During my time at Homeland Security, we tracked myriad Iranian threats here in the homeland, as you mentioned, against former government officials involved in the strike against Qasem Soleimani, against dissidents, against journalists, against the Saudi ambassador during the Obama administration, and against everyday Americans. So right now, while Iran has certainly taken a hit to its nuclear program and military installation, it is likely that they will rely on their asymmetric advantage in this context, which is their proxies.
Yeah, their advantage, you know what? Their advantages are running real thin. Okay? Like last few dollars in your wallet type of vulnerable. All right? So.
To try to send a signal to the United States and to the rest of the world that they just aren't going to take this hit without any kind of response. Now, how significant their reprisals will be is something the intelligence and law enforcement communities are likely looking into, but I am concerned about the threat here in the homeland.
Yeah, I'm looking at an email now from our Homeland Security correspondent, Nicole Skanga, detailing some of the law enforcement officials throughout the country who say they have not yet been given any kind of briefing in regard to possible downstream effects. But as you point out, that doesn't mean there isn't one. In fact, I was speaking to a U.S. official earlier today who said that this administration has shown a higher risk tolerance when it comes to things like this than past administrations. That was in reference to the security of Americans abroad. As we noted there, Sam, it was just earlier today that the U.S. ambassador to Israel announced the details of how to leave Israel right now with U.S. government chartered flights. Is that a little late in the game? If you have an American family member in the region right now, how worried should you be?
Well, Margaret, on your first point, law enforcement and intelligence professionals were already on heightened alert as it pertains to the Iranian threat, just based upon the strikes against Qasem Soleimani and just various Iranian threat streams that were around even when I was at DHS ending in 2023. So while they should get a briefing on downstream effects, they are already very aware of Iranian capabilities in this context and likely monitoring social media, encrypted platforms, and other sources to see if they can find any leads on specific threat streams following these military strikes. Now, I will tell you that we have had operational plans to evacuate Americans from the region for years and certainly post-October 7th. Those operational plans were ready to go, and I was very surprised that they were not implemented sooner based upon Israel strikes against Iran and what we knew to be potential strikes against Americans in the region. As soon as President Trump took the decision to launch these strikes, I would have expected him and his National Security Council to immediately begin to actively evacuate Americans, not just from Israel, but potentially from Lebanon, from Egypt, from Iraq. Iran is obviously more complicated. Just knowing that Iran will be looking for opportunities to harm Americans, whether that's through violence, through kidnapping, through harassment, and otherwise. So it wasn't a question of the operational plans not being ready. It was a question of the State Department deciding to implement those plans, the Department of Defense helping to operate them. And I think that is unfortunately too little too late based upon the cauldron that is the Middle East right now.
Right. Well, those are some cautionary words at this hour, Sam. We know that Americans were ordered out of U.S. mission Iraq a few days ago, but when it came to some of those other posts, there are still plenty of Americans working, living, and many of them with families as well. We're going to continue to track what's happening there in the region. And I want to go now to the White House, where we find White House correspondent Weijia Jiang. Weijia, I know from the rundown here, we saw the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, a number of key advisors, including the CIA director. And there has been a very public back and forth that the president has had disputing publicly the...
No. Again, you took those words out of context and you want to spin them. That's what's happening here. All right? You want to spin the narrative to make us believe that something is chaos between the two parties, between President Trump and Tulsi Gabbard. That's what this is about. You're trying to spin absolutely nothing into something.
Findings of the intelligence community when it came to assessing whether or not Iran was actually making a weapon, or whether it was, as the U.S. intelligence community said, wanting to be a threshold state. In other words, give themselves the option to get a weapon, but not actually building one. All of it comes back to that question of why this military action last Thursday and why this action now.
And Margaret, we've been really trying to drill down on that very question during this past week because President Trump gave a very specific timeline. He said that Iran was just weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. And so I asked during the last White House press briefing, Caroline Leavitt, what he meant by that. Did he mean that Iran was getting close to having enough enriched uranium, which is required to build that weapon, to start making a bomb, or is Iran just weeks away from actually finishing the production of a weapon? And she said that it would only take 2 weeks if the supreme leader gave the green light for Iran to have that weapon. And as you pointed out, that contradicts what we have heard from the IAEA, which, of course, monitors all the nuclear sites around the world.
Yeah, and how good is their capabilities to monitor something that they won't allow those people to take a look at? You know, oh, you can't go down that corridor, only down this one. Very specific. You can't look at this, you can't look at that. So, you know, how do we know what their abilities actually are and what they're actually allowed to do within Iran? All right? You don't. All right? So this is the exact correct course.
Which recently said that Iran was not actively pursuing a nuclear bomb, and also flies in the face of what the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, testified. Now, she did talk about those high levels of enriched uranium. That is very different from saying they actually are close to a bomb. But that is what the president said. That is.
Well, basically, if you enrich uranium, what do you think the end game is? All right? You don't need enriched uranium, all right, with centrifuges and all that to make nuclear power for your citizens. All right? So what do you think it means? It means that they're being defiant and they want to destroy. They want a mushroom cloud over their enemies. Israel, the U.S., any of our people, and any of our allies. All right? The global community has spoken. Not just the US, not just UK, not just Germany, not just Russia, not just Japan, but the global community has indicated no, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. So,
what this administration said, and so we will be asking for more details because that is so important to answer the why of why now, Margaret.
Yes, and an important question many lawmakers will be raising as well.
This whole
we know
narrative
that
is so much.
Lawmakers have not been briefed. They are scheduled to be briefed in the House and Senate on Tuesday by the Director of National Intelligence, along with military leaders, on exactly how all of this came about and the justification for it. We know as of this evening that the top leadership in Congress hasn't fully been briefed, or at least the Democrats who are in that so-called Gang of Eight, those who lead the parties in both houses and then also have oversight of the intelligence committees. The Republicans have told CBS that they have been briefed. The Democrats have not.
Because there is no lead, okay? We have the majority. The Republican Party has the majority in both houses. Democrats do not lead whatsoever. All right? So, you know, and you're not going to get anything out of Jeffries either. All right? So, you know, he's useless, along with the rest of the gang of eight.
Further, of course, will raise questions about any kind of politics here on such a significant issue of national security. This tonight, no doubt, has been the most significant national security and foreign policy decision the President of the United States has made in this second Trump term. We'll be tracking all of what comes next very closely, and we'll be bringing it to you here on CBS. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news on this CBS station, and of course, first thing tomorrow on CBS Sunday Morning, and with me on Face the Nation.
And with me, Dark Fury Patriot on YouTube. All right, so let's get this woman off the screen right about now. All right, so anyway, there you have it, folks. You know, the words that are being used here, the smugness, all right, of what you see here. All right? I mean, look at that. So, anyway, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. And I just had to share this if I can. You know, I'm not really worried about copyright material because it's really something that needs to be displayed, all right, and told and educated about the wrong words being used. They're trying to spin a narrative. They want you to believe their narrative. They don't want you thinking for yourself, all right? Don't do that. Do your own research. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.